Alright, so welcome, ladies and gentlemen. On today's episode, we are going to be taking you guys on Symbolic Logic 1. And the first step in Symbolic Logic 1 is how to symbolize. We already know that in English language, we have different kind of sentence. But in symbolic logic, or in logic in general, the kind of sentence that we make use of is called a proposition. Now, what is a proposition? A proposition is just a declarative statement that is asserting a fact which can be true or false. That is, for example, if I say Tomisi is a boy, this is an example of a proposition. The reason why this is a proposition is because it is asserting a fact. Although that fact can be true or false, it doesn't matter. But the fact that it's asserting a fact, it is a declarative statement, makes it a what? A proposition. Tomisi is a boy. That is a proposition. Bola is not a student. This is another proposition. Bola is not a student. So now, in symbolic logic, we have different kind of proposition. We have what we call simple proposition, and we have different ways of symbolizing the different kind of proposition that we have. When we say a simple proposition, what is a simple proposition? A simple proposition is just a proposition that does not lead another proposition as a complement. Let's say, for instance, now we have as a component. Let's say, for instance, we have Tomisi is a boy. Like I used the other time, Tomisi is a boy. This is an example of a simple proposition because it does not contain another proposition as a component. And if you want to symbolize this simple proposition now, all you need to do is to write T. Tomisi is a boy. T. That's all. That is how to symbolize a simple proposition. Let me give us another example of a simple proposition. Let's say we have Nigeria is a country. This is another simple proposition. Don't forget that a simple proposition is a proposition that does not contain another proposition as component. Nigeria is a country. That is a simple proposition. To symbolize this now, all you just have to do is to write N. Nigeria is a country. So now, another kind of proposition that we have is called compound proposition. So what is a compound proposition? Compound. Proposition. What is a compound proposition? A compound proposition is a proposition that contains another proposition as components. You know, a simple proposition does not contain any other proposition, but compound proposition contains other propositions as components. Let me give another example. Let's say I say something like Tomisi is a boy and today is Sunday. Tomisi is a boy and today is Sunday. This is an example of a compound proposition because this particular proposition contains another proposition as a component. That makes it a what? A compound proposition. Now, let me give another example of a compound proposition before I tell us how to symbolize them. Let's say we have something like, if ASU calls off the strike, then students will resume to school. If ASU calls off the strike, then students will resume to school. This is another example of a compound proposition, and the first one is also a compound proposition. To symbolize this first one now, all you just have to do is to write Tomisi is a boy. We are representing it with T. Today is Sunday. We are representing it with S. Now, there's another sign. There's a sign for this conjunctive statement. That is the word that is bringing the two of them together, like this and. This is the symbol for and. They call it dot. So that means anywhere you have and, this is the symbol that you're going to be making use of. If you have something like I am a boy and Faxing is a student, it's going to be B, and this is the sign for and, the symbol for and, then Faxing. I am a boy and Faxing is a girl. Another word that you can use in representing and is however. So the point I'm trying to make is that there are different connective statements that we have in symbolic logic. That is, we have different connective statements bringing two different words together in compound proposition. So that's going to lead us to the different kind of compound proposition that we have. Don't forget that in compound proposition, we are talking about propositions that have an other propositions as components. That is, this is not just a one proposition, which is a simple proposition. It has other proposition, and these other propositions are made possible using different kind of word that is joining those words together. I give an example of and. I've given an example of if and then. So let's now quickly discuss the various type of compound propositions that we have. So number one, we're talking about conjunction. Then this is the sign for conjunction. They call it dot. Then the English word that will represent this sign with, what we are symbolizing, is and. However, let's say for instance, etc. Let's say for instance, we have a statement like Tomisin is a student and also a student, or also a lover of music. This particular statement now is like saying Tomisin is a student and Tomisin is also a lover of music. So if I want to symbolize this now, Tomisin is a student, let's say I'm representing it with S, and I'm going to be representing it with this dot. Then lover of music, I'm representing it with M. So I've symbolized Tomisin is a student and a lover of music. Then the next type of compound proposition that we have is called disjunction. Disjunction. Then this is the sign for disjunction. They call it V. They call it V, just a small V. They call it V. Then the English word that we use disjunction for is or. We also use unless. So that means anywhere you have or and also anywhere you have unless, they are going to be representing it with this small V when you are symbolizing. Let's say for instance now that I say something like Ade is a student or a musician. So this statement is just like saying Ade is a student or Ade is a musician. So if I want to represent Ade is a student and I want to symbolize it, I can say S. Then this or, I'm going to be symbolizing it with this V. Just this one V. Then Ade is a musician. Let's say I'm representing that with M. So this is how to symbolize Ade is a student or Ade is a musician. So this or is what I'm representing with this V. Let's say I have something like I will not go home, I will not, or I will go to my house unless I have enough money. So if I want to symbolize this now, I will go to my house. Let's say I'm representing it with H, unless I'm representing it with this small V. I have enough money, I'm representing it with M. So H or M. So it's as simple as that. There's no magic or there's no big deal in symbolization. So let's go to the third kind of compound proposition that we have. Don't forget that compound proposition is just like different kind of proposition coming together to form one using different kind of English. So what we are just symbolizing is to show you what you are going to use when you have this kind of English. When you have and, the sign that you are going to use is different from when you have or, the sign you are going to use. So let's talk about the third one, which is implication. Implication or conditional statements. So they call it implication or conditional. So now let me give you the sign that they use conditional or implication for is something like this. They call it horseshoe. And the English word that they represent this sign with is if then. They also use implies. anything that is telling us that something is implying the other one, or one thing is leading to another thing, we are going to be making use of this conditional sign. So let me give an example. If you have something like, if today is Sunday, then I will go to church. So to symbolize this now, all I just need to do is to write today is Sunday, I'm representing it with S. I will go to church, I'm representing it with C. Then this sign, which is the if and then, I'm going to be representing it with this horseshoe. So if today is Sunday, then I'll be going to church. So it's as simple as that. Let me give another example using implies. Let's say we have something like Tomisin is a student, implies that he is a learner. So to symbolize this now, all I just need to do, Tomisin is a student, I'm representing it with T, implies that this sign, he is a learner, L. So it's as simple as that. There's no magic or anything about it. Now the last one, the last compound proposition that we have, is called biconditional. And the sign that they represent biconditional with is this. They call it trigger. 1, 2, 3, trigger. And the English word that they use biconditional with, or this particular sign to represent, is if and only if. Now, before we explain biconditional in details, I missed something out in the conditional statement, which is the if then statement. Please don't confuse if then statement with if and only if. If and only if is strictly meant for biconditional, while if then statement is strictly meant for conditional or implication. So I missed something else the other time. One thing that you need to note is that there is what we call antecedent and consequent in conditional statements. Let's say we have something like, if there is school today, then students will be in class. Then the sign, the way to symbolize this is going to be, okay, there is school today, S implies students will be in class, C. Now, one thing that you need to note in conditional statements, don't forget that I'm just trying to remind us something about conditional statements. I'm not talking about biconditional yet. Conditional statements. One thing that you need to note is that we have what we call antecedent and consequent. The word that is coming immediately after if, any word that is coming immediately after if is our antecedent. Then the other one is our what? Consequent. In this statement now, we have if there is school today, then students will be in class. There is school today is our antecedent. Student will be in class is our consequence. So any word that is coming immediately after if is our antecedent. Then the word that is coming immediately after then is our consequence. Irrespective of the placement of the word, any word that is coming, the placement of the statement, any word that is coming immediately after if is our antecedent. Then any word that is coming immediately after then is our consequence. And when you are symbolizing, you symbolize the antecedent first before the consequence. Let me give an example. Let's say we have something like, then there is, let's say we have something like, there is school today if students are in class. There is school today if students are in class. Don't forget the rule of conditional. The rule of conditional states that there is what we call antecedent and there is what we call consequent. Any word that is coming immediately after if is our antecedent, then the other one is our consequence. And when you are symbolizing, you symbolize the antecedent first before the consequence. So now here we have there is school today if students will be in class. If you want to symbolize this now, it's going to be C implies S, because if this is the word that is coming immediately after if, students will be in class, and the rule state that the word that is coming immediately after if is our antecedent, and is the antecedent that you symbolize first when you are symbolizing. So if students will be in class, then you now symbolize there is school today. So it's very, very clear. Antecedent, consequence, you symbolize antecedent first, then the consequence later. Then any word that is coming immediately after if is our antecedent, then the other one is our what? Our consequence. So let's quickly explain biconditional. So like I said, the English word that they represent biconditional with is if and only if, and this is the sign for biconditional. Let's say we have something like, I will give you money if and only if I collect my salary. If I want to symbolize this now, I will give you money. I'm symbolizing this with M. If and only if, this is the sign for it. Shiba. I collect my salary, I'm representing it with S. So that's all. I will give you money if and only if I collect my salary. So biconditional is no more than that. Then the last thing that we'll be talking about on how to symbolize is what we call negation. A parenthesis is used to group two variables together. Parentheses, they are used to group two variables together. Let's say we have something like P and Q. Then you now want to group them together. You make use of parentheses. Parenthesis is used to group two variables together. And the only time that you group them together is because probably you want to add something else to it. Let's say implies Q or implies R. So you use parentheses to group just two variables together. And the reason why you are grouping them together is because there is something coming after it. It can also be P and Q implies R. I'm still going to be talking about how to know which of the variables to group, whether it's the first two or the last two. But let's quickly talk about the next punctuation, which is called square brackets. Square brackets. So square brackets are used to group expressions that already contain parentheses. Parenthesis is used to group two variables together, while square brackets are used to group expression that already contains parentheses. Let's say for instance we have P and Q, then this one is already in parentheses, implies R. Then you now want to add something else to it. That means you have to signify whether these three are together. That is, you have to group them together, and you cannot group them together using parentheses again. It doesn't make sense. So square bracket is introduced to group expression that already contains parentheses. Let's say we want to group this together now, then we'll make use of square brackets. Let's say we want to add if and only if S or C. So square brackets are used to group expression that already contain parentheses. Then the last one, we have brace. So just like square brackets are used to group expression that already contain parentheses, brace are used to group expression that already contain square brackets. Let's say for instance we have something like P and Q. This is already in parentheses. We have implies S. This is already in square brackets. And we have, let's say, if and only if T or U, and this one is already probably in parentheses. Then we now want to group everything together. We cannot make use of square bracket again. It doesn't make sense because we have already used square brackets before for this particular one. So this doesn't make sense. So if we now want to group, let's say, everything together now, we are going to be making use of brace. So to recap again, parentheses are used to group just two variables together. Square brackets are used to group expression that already contains parentheses, while brace are used to group expression that already contain square brackets. So now, I was saying the other time that how are you going to know whether, let's say, when discussing parentheses, for instance, when you are using parentheses, let's say we have P and Q implies T. This particular proposition can actually be interpreted in two ways. It can actually mean P and Q in parentheses implies T, and it can also mean P and Q implies T in parentheses. So how are you going to know that, okay, is it the first two that I'm going to put in parentheses, or is the last two that I'm going to put in parentheses? Now that is where you have to pay attention to your comma and full stop when you are symbolizing. When you are symbolizing, any word that comes immediately before a comma, any word that comes immediately before a comma, that is, any word that comes before a comma, means just one thing. If it is two in one statement, then you have to group them together to make it one. Let's say, for instance, we have Olu is a boy and Tola is a girl, comma, implies that Tomisin is a man, full stop. Now, what I was explaining earlier was that anytime you are symbolizing, any words that come, or any sentence that comes immediately after before a comma, it means one thing. If it is two in one, you have to group them together. Just like we have Olu is a boy and Tola is a girl. It's coming before a comma. That means these two like this, they are just one. You have to group them together. It has to be O and T. You have to group them together because it's coming before a comma. Then the one that comes after it implies that Tomisin is a man. See, let me say Tomisin is a man. I'm representing it with M. Implies M. So the reason why O and T is inside parentheses is because the two of them are coming before a comma, then implies this one. But had it been the comma is actually here, let's say the comma is here, the comma is not here, Olu is a boy, that means that one is standing on its own, and Tola is a girl implies that Tomisin is a man. Then let's say T implies M, then this is what you are going to group together. So when you are symbolizing, you have to watch out for your comma. Any word that coming immediately, any word that comes before a comma means one thing. If it is two in one, you group them together. Then the one that comes after is also one. If it is two in one, you also put them in parentheses. So then another thing to put in mind is your full stop. Whenever you are symbolizing, you have to put your full stop in mind, your comma and your full stop. Like I said, any words or any sentence that is coming before the comma is just it means just one thing. You have to group them together. Then anywhere you see a full stop when you are symbolizing, then that is the end of that line. Let's say we have different arguments. We have an argument now. An argument is a group of proposition. Then you have to look at how many full stop that you have. The number of full stop that you have is going to determine the number of lines that you are going to be having after symbolizing, because anywhere you have a full stop, that is the end of that line. So let me give us an example of an argument. Let's say we have something like, if today is Monday, implies, if today is Monday, okay, it implies that Tomisin and Shile will go to school. Let's say after this statement, we now have a full stop. Then we now have something like Tope is a girl if and only if Tope is a female. Then we have another full stop. Then we now have, therefore, Tomisin go to school, another full stop. Now let's consider this as an argument. For example, the first thing that you need to do before symbolizing is you can count how many full stops do we have in this particular argument. Now how many full stops do you have? 1, 2, 3. That shows that after symbolizing, you are just going to be having 3 different lines. If you have more than 3 different lines, then your symbolization is not correct. So now, like I said, anywhere the first full stop ends, that is the end of that line. So that means from here to this place, it's just going to be just on one line. Then from here to this place is another one line. Then from here to this place is another one line. So let's symbolize the first one first. If today is Monday, let's represent that with M. Implies there's a comma here. That means this one is just 1. Implies that Tomisin and Shile will go to school. Full stop. Let's say Tomisin and Shile. That's T and S. Because there is a comma here, that shows that this one is just going to stand on its own. Then these 2 are coming after the comma. We are going to put them in parentheses. Then that's the end of that line. Then the next one, Tope is a girl. If and only if Tope is a girl, let's represent it with G. If and only if Tope is a female, let's represent it with F. Therefore, Tomisin go to school. Then that's just going to be T. Therefore, T. So it's as simple as that. Anywhere your full stop is, that's the end of that line. Then any word that is coming before a comma means one thing. If it is together, group them together. Then everything that is coming after the comma is also one thing. If it is 2 in 1, you group them together using parentheses. So that's all. Alright, so the next thing that we are going to be talking about is, we discussed the different compound, proposition, conjunction, disjunction, biconditional, and conditional or implication. So we are going to be talking about their truth value. That is, how do we know they are true? Is it that if the first one is true, the second one is true, then the 2 together are true? Or if the first one is false, the second one is false, the 2 together are false? So we are going to be looking at the truth value of those compound statements, starting with conjunction. Then each and every compound statement has the rule guiding in its truth value. So a conjunction is only true when both conjuncts are true. A conjunction is only true when both conjuncts are true. In other words, let's say the first conjunct is P, the second one is Q. Then the conjunctive statement together is P and Q. Then the rule states that a conjunction is only true when both conjuncts are true. A conjunction is only true when both conjuncts are true. In other words, if this is true, then this is true. If this is true, this is false, then this is false. If this is false, this is true, then this is false. If this is false, this is false, then this is false. Because a conjunction is only true when both conjuncts are true. That's all. Then the next one is disjunction. Then the rule of disjunction states that a disjunction is only false when both disjuncts are false. In other words, let's say we have P, which is the first disjunct, Q, which is the second disjunct, then P or Q, which is the disjunctive statement together. So a disjunction is only false when both disjuncts are false. In other words, if this is true, then the 2 of them together is true. If this is true, this is false, then the 2 of them together is true. If this is false, this is true, then the 2 of them together is true. If this is false, then the 2 of them together is what? Is false. Because in disjunction, a disjunction is only true, is only false when both disjuncts are false. Every other thing is true. Then the next one that we'll be discussing is called conditional or implication. Don't forget that in conditional, in the other video, we said that what the word that is coming immediately after if is our antecedent, and when you are symbolizing, you symbolize the antecedent first. Then the word that is coming immediately after then is our consequence. When you are symbolizing, you symbolize the consequence later. after the antecedent. Then in some situation whereby they give you if, they did not give you then, once you already have the antecedents, you know the following one is your consequence. And in a situation whereby they give you then, they did not put the if, once you already discover the consequence, you already know that the previous one is our antecedent. So now the rule guiding conditioner is that a conditioner is only false when the antecedent is true and the consequence is false. It is only false when the antecedent is true and the consequence is false. So the antecedent P, the consequence Q, then the conditional statement together P implies Q. The only time it is false when is only when the antecedent is true and the consequence is false. So if the antecedent is true, the consequence is true, then the conditional statement is what? True. If the antecedent is true, the consequence is false, then the conditional statement is what? Is false, because it is only false when the antecedent is true and the consequence is false. Then if the antecedent is false, the consequence is true, then the conditional statement together is what? True. If the antecedent is false, the consequence is false, then this conditional statement together is true. It is only false when the antecedent is true and the consequence is false. Then the last one, biconditional. A biconditional is only true when they have the same value, and it is only false when they don't have the same value. So P Q, then P if and only if Q. It is only true when they have the same truth value or when they have the same value, and it is only false when they have different value. Let's say the first one is true, the second one is true, then the biconditional statement is true. They have the same truth value. The first one is true, the second one is false, then the biconditional statement is false because they did not have the same value. The first one is false, the second one is true, then the biconditional statement is false. They did not have the same value. The first one is false, the second one is false, then the biconditional together is what? True, because they have the same value. So ladies and gentlemen, this is where we are going to be stopping for the truth value and also symbolization of different kind of proposition that we have in symbolic language. Symbolic logic. In our next video, we are going to be talking about how to resolve a breach, or how to test the validity or an invalidity of an argument using a breach and truth table. Then we can move on to the rule of inconsistency, the rule of replacement, and the rule of inferences. So thank you.